most macroeconomists know that the standards of living of the elderly deteriorate really fast in their last years. And this is something that we knew for a while. We are just documenting that their inflation rate is one of the aspects that deteriorates that standard of living. So I don't think we're saying anything new about that. It has tremendous policy implications, especially if your retirement systems are public. So in the United States, we have a part that is Social Security, but almost everything else is individual retirement accounts. So it's private, so the state in some sense says, well, I am just in charge of a minimum pension. But if you look at minimum pensions in the world, minimum pensions grow much faster than inflation. And the reason is the elderly, they are the ones that are suffering from the inflation rate and the deterioration of the quality of life, so they complain a lot. And they have a lot of free time, by the way. Okay, so I remember my mother was retired, and she was complaining every single day to the government to increase the minimum pension. Very successfully, she increased her pension for a long time. So you actually see in reality those. We could do much better, and in fact, the pension funds could do much better if they understood what is the inflation rate they have to track, and if they could hedge against it. So you see, the problem is that now the only indicator we have is the inflation rate of headline. So let's at least try to compensate for that 2% inflation as opposed to 4%, which is probably what the elderly are suffering in developed nations right now. Oh, I have more questions, yes? And I'll go up the back after. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation, Salih Al-Uthman from KIA. My question is, I don't know if is there, from your personal view, do you see like extraordinary inflation implications that will happen in the future, given that the quantity easing that happened in Europe and the US and all around the world? And second question is, what about the sectors in terms of if you want to invest? You said that we have the food and utilities that is very sensitive to inflation. And in order to hedge inflation, you might invest in these sectors. What other maybe sectors do you think is really inflation hedge?
Okay, so on the second question, again, as I said before, I am a very bad investment manager. Is that okay? So please, what I say from now on, assume I didn't say it. But first, I don't think there are sectors that are good for hedging inflation. It's very specific to the companies, and companies are organized very differently. Boeing is a very different company, or Apple is very different from Dell. Both are in the production of computers and electronics. But Dell doesn't have a big retail sector, while Apple has a humongous retail sector. So actually the profits of these two companies, even though they belong to the same sector, have a very different behavior towards inflation rate. Okay, so I think that we have to be more careful than what we have done before. Now, the problem is that in the past, because we did not have a daily measure of inflation rate, we could not tease the differences between Apple and Dell. We can now. So the purpose will be, what are the stocks that have that properties and in which sectors they are? It makes sense that financials are relatively hedged against inflation, but the question, I can assure you, State Street is far more better prepared to hedge inflation rate than Citibank. Because Citibank has to deal with the depositors. State Street has 3 activities. Custody, and so it's just very different business. The profits are not the same. So in that sense, I would like to change the emphasis from industries towards stocks. On your first question about inflation risk in the world, the developed nations are in very bad shape. Therefore, I don't see inflation risk anytime soon. Even though we are printing both in Europe, I mean, in 3 places now we will be printing. We will be printing in Japan in 2 months from now. We will be printing as if there's no tomorrow, okay? We have been printing in the US for a while, and we have been printing in Europe for a while. So, but all the 3 regions are in very bad shape. When I look at a country like Greece, Greece has to undergo either a very long recession to be able to gain competitiveness, and when I mean very long, it's about a decade and a half, Japan style of recession. Or they have to abandon the euro, or that's it. That's it. People put a third option, which are reforms. Oh, let's do reforms. What reforms can you do in Greece? Greece is already a developed nation. There are not a lot of new reforms that can suddenly spark growth in Greece. The growth is not going to appear by massive reforms. You need an economy that is very inefficient for reforms to make a dent. They have a trade open, they have relatively good labor market. Of course, it can be improved, but it's not a lot of room for reforms. So developed nations are going to be here for a while. And so I don't see a lot of risk there. Emerging markets, everybody else, I do think that we will have inflation risk. And we will have countries that are in very different part of the cycle. So we will have the Chile of the world, the Peru, Colombia, Mexico, Brazil, China, Australia. I am putting Australia on the emerging market. I know it's very insulting, but it's okay. But those countries will suffer from inflation rate. And the reason is that those banking sectors are relatively healthy, and those banking sectors in some sense, and those economies have the labor market relatively tight. So in those places, a small amount of printing will make a difference. This goes back to a question that the lady asked on the back about how things change dramatically between recessions and not recessions, and about the economy. Fiscal stimulus in China produces a lot of inflation, but the same fiscal stimulus in Ireland produces no inflation whatsoever. It's the same stimulus. And it's because the structure of the economy is very different. So I see more of the inflation risk on emerging markets now than anything else. One more question, and then I close. Yes, on the back. The gentleman with a very long arm.
Thank you. Magdi Ali from Gulf Investment Corporation. As you kindly mentioned that inflation has been muted in mature economies, the question is, there is a debate going on these days whether inflation targeting could be valid for being a nominal anchor for monetary policy. What's your take on that? If you are an advocate of inflation targeting, what's your proof for the argument? If not, do you think there is other nominal anchors could be in place, such monetary aggregates or nominal interest rates, or even nominal growth of GDP?
I see.
Thank you.
So the question is if I advocate inflation targeting, or if I, in some sense, agree with the excessive support that inflation targeting has received in the past. Especially for emerging markets, specifically for that. I have 17 years doing research on monetary policy. 17 years writing papers. Imagine how boring my life is, that I write on the same topic for 17 years. And I think I have about 30 papers on monetary policy. So imagine how boring my life is, okay? And if I have learned something from those 17 years and 30 papers, is that it's a very deep statement that one size doesn't fit all. That I actually think that we have a set of tools, and countries have to adopt the set of tools that are important for the country at the moment where that has the biggest impact to the standard of living of the country. My hope will be, let me rephrase your question. My hope will be that the president of the central bank should be a person that says, I want to maximize the welfare of the citizens that I am working for. I want to maximize the welfare of the citizens of Kuwait. And if that requires today to target inflation, that's what I will do. But 5 years from now, maybe I have to target money aggregates. And 5 years from now, maybe I have to do quantitative easing to save the banking system, etc. If your objective is to maximize the welfare of your citizens, central bankers will become pragmatic, in the sense that today the set of rules, the set of tools that maximize that welfare are the ones that are consistent with my country today. And I think that that's how central bankers should do it. By the way, that was my thesis when I graduated from MIT, and I have not changed my views whatsoever. So 30 papers later, I still think exactly the same way. And today, for example, in most emerging markets are moving away from inflation targeting, because after this recession, it proved very costly for their citizens. So I'm really glad that Brazil moved away from that, and that Chile moved away from that, and that England moved away from that. It was very important for their citizens. So I actually think that was the proper choice. But when inflation comes again, and the developed world recovers, I can assure you we will be moved back to put inflation as the most important target for central banks. That pragmatism that I think is the key for prosperity. In fact, I think that that's true everywhere, from investment on. Let me finish with one statement and thank everybody for being so patient and spending all the morning here. I want to thank you for taking time from your busy agendas to spend the morning talking about my passion. I want to say something about what is my objective in life, okay? And I think that paradigms, in fact, people that study how paradigms are changed or how paradigms are shifted, they always highlight three forces. One force that changes that paradigm are new theories. When suddenly in our history we have created new theories, we have invented new ways of understanding life, that has changed dramatically the way individuals behave, the way the individuals relate, the way individuals understand the reality. So discovering calculus changed dramatically the way we all thought about the world and so on. And suddenly we discovered the globe is round, so that changes our paradigm. So new theories have that impact of changing dramatically the paradigms of individuals. And in fact, we reward new theories. We humankind reward new theories. We give them Nobel Prizes, and they all are in the newspapers. The second aspect, the second force, the second benevolent force that changes paradigms are new technologies. So we all know what the iPad is today, and everyone here will agree that 20 years from now, education will be changed dramatically. Probably our grandkids will not know what the word textbook means. They all will be reading on iPads. They will be all doing their homework on iPads. Universities will change. The internet is forcing us to change, but this is going to make us change even further. So new technologies have an impact in the sense that we change the way we relate to each other. Facebook, my daughter is a student at MIT. She is a freshman. And she is only 1 kilometer away from my office. And I never see her, never. But so I call her, or I send her an email, and I said, Alexandra, how are you doing today? She always answers, have you checked my status on Facebook? I said, no, my darling, how are you doing? It's on my status. Why are you asking me? Don't waste my time. If I have something to share with humankind, it's in Facebook. Go there, like any normal parent will do. Say, no, normal parents call their kids. Then become abnormal and don't call me. So we invite her for dinner, at least. At least we produce better food than Facebook. So she still comes home sometimes. But new technologies have changed dramatically the way we see the world and we relate to each other. And again, new technologies are things that receive attention. And we actually put them in newspapers and we give Nobel Prizes, etc. There is a third force. And that third force is about changes in measurement. And in fact, changes in measurement has been as important to changes of paradigm as theories or technologies. In fact, when biologists created these great theories about how the genes are moving, well, we needed a microscope to actually validate that. And when physicists were inventing new theories about relativity, we needed telescopes to actually validate those theories and so on. So changes in measurement have in the history the same impact. But changes in measurement do not receive the same amount of credit. We don't pay attention to those. Rarely. Sometimes happen in the private sector. So we rarely give Nobel Prizes. We rarely make it to the newspapers. I call them, those are the innovations that are non-sexy. New theories, new technology, ooh, that is cool. That is beautiful. New measurement, please. Nothing can be more boring. But that's exactly what I do. Every day, I go to a country and I collect 600, 700 prices of tomatoes. And I look at the price of the same 600 the day before that. And I compute the inflation rate of tomatoes.